line as well. We want to hear your thoughts. What was the vibe? Because, I mean, I think when you go back to Mexico, and we can close the book on it, it was a great time for Niner faithful, everybody involved. But that was, you saw the 38 points and you thought, is this what the offense is going to be now? No, it's not. And even though the Cardinals played pretty well today against the Chargers, obviously they get Kyler Murray back, we knew that wasn't going to be what this looked like every day. But what we hoped for was in terms of how the Niners looked, not necessarily the scoreboard, but how the Niners looked offensively. Could we see something like that every game? Well, number one, the bottom line is that the Cardinals defense and the Saints defense, they are not the same. The Saints, they have a pretty good defense, as we were talking about during the game, that they don't look as good numbers-wise because the offense isn't very good. The Red Rifle, Andy Dalton's trying to do his thing. Jameis is crying on the sideline. There's a lot going on there. So we got to see this new Niners offense against a defense who can get after the quarterback and do some different things. And if you are a Niners fan, you probably weren't exactly thrilled at the offense, but at the end of the day, you got to come out with a W, and you did see some flashes. Christian McCaffrey is going to be Christian McCaffrey. I thought personally it was a little too much McCaffrey in the first half, and he did end up getting banged up. Luckily, he came back in the game. We're going to learn more as we dive into this postgame in terms of Elijah Mitchell, who went out with a knee injury, which isn't great either, but that's just the breaks these days, man.
Yeah, and I do think this Saints team was a little underrated because of kind of what you mentioned. We'll talk about some of the things that we didn't like from the 49ers, but again, you have to appreciate a win, and especially in the NFC, which is right now asking for someone to establish itself as a power outside of Philadelphia, really outside of the NFC East. Mm-hmm. The 49ers are establishing themselves as that team, and I know that every single week you're hoping for a dominant win. But look, you beat a team by 13 points. I know it was 13-0, but you still won by double digits. That is worth something. And even if the offense was kind of bailed out on a couple of occasions, even if the defense, who pitched a shutout, got maybe some help, a missed field goal, a lot of drop passes from the Saints, as well as 2 fumbles, one of them being at the goal line like we heard coming out of the break. But at the end of the day, the 49ers did what they had to do against a team that to me was not necessarily asking to be beat, but a team that is sort of like the Saints are a group that will simply just muddle up the game. They're going to bring you down to their level. Mm. And the 49ers may have played at that level for a lot of today offensively, but defensively, they were supremely dominant. And most importantly on defense, I know we'll get to the injuries on offense, but they didn't get anyone banged up on defense, right, even if there were a couple of plays that made you wonder, Exactly. So whenever we do this, we have this conversation, you talk about a Niner game, what's the first thing you're going to talk about? The quarterback play. Jimmy Garoppolo, 26 for 37, 222 yards, 1 touchdown on the day. Didn't play bad at all, but I think that some of the things that we saw him do against the Cardinals, again, we all got brought back down to life a little bit against a better defense. When you have so much time, the pressure that the Cardinals weren't able to get last week, the Saints were able to get some pressure. And you saw Jimmy have to try to go through his progressions a little quicker than he probably would have liked. We saw that play that got called back, that interception that didn't go to the house but took them to about the 7-yard line, that got called back for illegal contact, which I believe that was late in the first half. That was a play that could have changed the game. And I know what everybody was thinking. The Jimmy no throw, it finally came. It had been delayed. The packages, a lot of packages coming for the holidays. It had been delayed, but it finally made it. The Jimmy no throw came. And then he got a good call, or the Niners got to overcome that because it got called back and it never happened, and Jimmy didn't look back and didn't throw another interception. But you saw him under fire more, and you saw a little bit of, he's not exactly a completely different person than he was last season. We just saw him against a couple teams these past couple games that defensively aren't very good. Yeah, and look, I think the Saints have kind of taken a page out of the Cardinals, the Chargers, the last few teams that have faced the 49ers, which we're going to stack the box and force Jimmy Garoppolo to try and beat us through the air. Now, the difference is the Saints have a top 10 pass defense, as opposed to those other groups who are not very good. But they're saying, and to your point off the top about a lot of work for McCaffrey, well, McCaffrey wasn't as efficient as he had been in the last couple of games. This is where we're starting to see maybe the opponents for San Francisco start to hone in a little more on Christian McCaffrey. Jimmy Garoppolo threw the ball 28 times in the first half. I know they did so 21 times against the Cardinals. Teams are saying, we will rush 4 and force Jimmy Garoppolo to move the ball through the air. That play, I'm glad you brought it up because it also kind of outlined another factor of the game which made the overall matchup a little disinteresting to me. And that was the amount of flags that we saw today, the amount of laundry that was on the field. And I know that Chris Harris Jr. maybe felt like he shouldn't have been called for the holding before the interception that Jimmy Garoppolo threw. That by no means excuses the throw that Garoppolo made. But there was a hold on Kittle at the end of the first half that denied Elijah Mitchell a touchdown. That was kind of a ticky-tack play. There was a lot of stoppages at the beginning of the second half that sort of muddled things up. There was a lot of whistles that didn't need to be called to the point where people on social media are saying the refs are inserting themselves and who are we here to watch? The Saints, the 49ers? No, we're here to watch the Zebras. Like, there was a lot of that going on as well throughout this game that made it less entertaining than it could have been. But for Garoppolo, yeah, it wasn't his best game, and he probably should have had an interception, maybe multiple. But I do think also the Saints did a good job at creating pressure. I think they had like a 35% pressure rate in the first half. Jimmy G, when he gets happy feet, can cause trouble. Even if we examine the 26 for 37, he was technically efficient. The Saints gave a bit of a game plan of how you want to attack Jimmy G.
He was doing the happy feet for sure. He was hopping a little bit. You could tell his energy was just a little bit different than you saw last week. But obviously, when you have more time to kick it, I mean, last week he could have. You talk about Thanksgiving, he could have made his gobbler, his stuffing, his cranberry sauce, his turkey. He had time to make sandwiches and do a bunch of stuff last week. This week, he didn't have that ability, and you could see that his internal clock got sped up. And luckily, the Niners, are not luckily, because it's not luck, they came out and they got it done. These are one of those interesting games where, and again, 888-957-9570 call line and Xfinity mobile text line. These are one of those games where you got out with the win, but I'm not sure if you're a Niners fan, do you feel better about your team or do you feel the same? Because I feel like I don't necessarily feel better. I guess you have to feel better because you got the W, but I don't feel as if, all right, the Niners, I don't think they necessarily inserted themselves as a lot of people thought that they were starting to do last week when they just destroyed the Cardinals. Okay, this is the team to beat in the NFC. But again, maybe just the fact that they won does that. But in watching this game, to me, it was almost as much about the Saints and where they're at in their weird, not rebuild, but not really competing season, as it was about how well the Niners played, because there were a lot of missed opportunities. That Kamara play, a great play by Hufanga, but that's a play where, I know Kamara, didn't he have a video a couple of years ago where he was pulling a truck or something crazy like that? So he really was trying to get into the end zone, and he not easily, but he was really working to get in there. Hufanga comes in, knocks it away, but you could tell this team is just really struggling to just get over the hump, and they're not going to do it this year. And if you played this version of that team next year, where maybe they shore up some things, maybe it's a tougher game. I mean, there were a lot of mistakes on the Saints. I mean, we're sitting there watching the game, and how many dimes did the red rifle throw that the Saints just missed? They just missed. One to Olave, one in the end zone late in the game where they just missed the ball.
Yeah, I believe that the count unofficially was 8 drop passes by the Saints. That's going to hurt you in any game, whether you have Andy Dalton or you have Patrick Mahomes. 8 drop passes is going to hurt you, especially when some come in the red zone. But I am glad that you brought up the Kamara fumble because, well, actually 2 of them, because he fumbled on the first drive and obviously fumbled at the goal line down the stretch there in the second half, which to me really just put the game out of reach for New Orleans. But that's something that the 49ers have not really done a whole lot this year on defense. Now, they have the number 1 ranked defense. They do not allow points. They do not allow much in the red zone. They do not allow a lot on third down. But they surprisingly do not turn the football over that much. And so that was kind of a next step to try and unlock a different level for this defense that we hadn't seen yet. We saw it more today, and that is a plus. That is worth something, especially against a New Orleans team that has one of the worst turnover differentials in the league. You talked about their defense being maybe a bit better than we expected because their offense puts them behind the 8 ball. Well, it's because they turn over the football a lot. 19 turnovers coming into the game, 2 turnovers forced by the defense through the air. So they really just struggled I thought that New Orleans did putting anything together because of those mistakes. And some of them were forced on their own, drop passes, but some of them were also because the 49ers were breathing down their necks every single play. And when you're expecting that hit to come from Fred Warner, you're expecting Charvarius Ward to be in your grill on the outside, when you're expecting Nick Bosa to come off the edge like he did to get his 11th and a half sack on fourth down, which basically sealed that part of the game for the Niners, it makes those 50-50 balls where you could make a catch, or if you're trying to get the extra yard, you're thinking twice because the Niners are coming at you.
And that's the thing, because I don't necessarily want to sit here and talk about, well, I mean, were they offsides on that play? Because the bottom line is it didn't get called. So we're going to switch up the vibe a little bit, because I won't call it breaking news, but it's time for the faithful 888-957-9570 to let us know how you're feeling, because officially the Niners, they're in first place as the Seahawks lose in Seattle to the Raiders on a walk-off overtime tutty. I'm still working on getting the details. Thank you, Sterling, for sending in. 86 yards.
Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs, who went off in that game. He went off the whole game. He was catching balls and doing a lot of different things. So happy for him.
First play of overtime.
Get in, get out, get on with your life. And that's what the Raiders are trying to do as they try to crawl back into anybody even paying attention to them. And the Seahawks are starting to trend down. And you look today, you have another game against another team in the NFC that we're still trying to figure out who you are. And if the Eagles come out and play the way that they've been playing, which is not great, and let's say that bad man Aaron Rodgers comes in and sneaks one out, the Niners, now you don't care. Now you don't care at all about the 13-0 and that about your missed opportunities, because the bottom line is, whether it's pretty, whether it's got makeup on it, whether it doesn't, the Niners are winning football games when these other teams in the NFC are not doing that. And look, the Geno story is great. They wrote me off. I didn't write back, though. One of the best bars we've ever heard. But could some of the magic be starting to slip away for the Seahawks? Is it about to strike 12 for the Seahawks Cinderella story? And that's what it's seeming to do. And when the Niners head up there on that Thursday night, the Niners right now, they have this momentum. And even if they drop one of these next couple games against these better opponents for sure than the Saints, the Niners are building momentum as the Seahawks are losing it. So if you are a Niner fan, you got to be happy about that, regardless of whatever score. You could have won 3-0. We were watching the game and I referenced that LSU Alabama game. Well, I don't know how many years ago that was, when it was 6-3. You don't care right now because the Seahawks just lost at home. The 12th man, they're all going home crying with their face paint. You know it's cold up there because it's always cold up there. And the Niners got the W. The Niners got the W. And by the way, you Niners fans, because there's still Raiders fans hanging out around here, if you got your Raiders buddies, send them a text. Tell them thank you. Because the Niners, they're in first place, baby. They're in first place.
That they are. And that's why a win means maybe more than how it looked or how it felt. Because, look, if someone called in and told me that they took a nap in the second quarter through the third, I wouldn't have blamed you. Right. All right. So, like, there wasn't a lot of big plays, and especially when, we were kind of worried about Christian McCaffrey, who exited the game tail end of the first half, eventually came back, but of course you relied more on Jordan Mason with Elijah Mitchell going down with a knee injury. Hopefully he's not out or re-aggravated that MCL that put him on the IR earlier this season. But, for the 49ers elsewhere, injuries seems like the only thing that can keep this team back from realizing its potential, which hopefully is going to be another conference championship appearance. But that's also part of it too. Like today, there were none of those scary sort of situations. I know that there was a late hit on Jimmy Garoppolo by one of the Saints defensive linemen, which kind of bent his knee, and people were, it was a little bit scary there.
He was writhing in pain.
Yeah.
He was writhing in pain.
And so right now, you're basically, you're not an injury away, but an injury away at a critical position to a guy like Christian McCaffrey or obviously Nick Bosa. Even your quarterback, I know people don't think necessarily highly of Jimmy G, especially after a game like this today, but you do need him if you want to get to the ultimate goal at this point. Look, the Niners are where they need to be, which is stacking up wins and defeating teams that they're supposed to beat. They didn't do that early in the season. And I know it didn't look great. I know 13 points after a 38-point explosion is like, oh, what are we doing? But at the end of the day, you're in first place. Mm-hmm. You're looking at a Miami team that is beatable next week. Tampa Bay looks beatable after losing to the Browns. Like, you are in the driver's seat for the first time this season, and that's got to be worth something.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tampa Bay was a team. We'll get into the landscape of the NFC a little bit later, but Tampa Bay was a team I was thinking, all right, they were similar to the Niners track, bit banged up to start the season. Maybe they can get rolling, which they still can, but it seems like it just might not be their year. There's no disrespect to Jacoby Brissett, and we know the Browns have a good team, but it just doesn't seem like the Bucs are able to figure it out this season. The injury to Elijah Mitchell, obviously we need to figure out, let's hope the best. Let's hope he's not out, especially on a day where the two running backs that are no longer with the Niners, Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., had some things to say. When they traded away Jeff Wilson Jr., that was the worry for a lot of fans. What if Elijah Mitchell, he's had some injuries in the past. What if he goes down? And Christian McCaffrey has had some injuries in the past. What if he goes down? How do these things break down? Jordan Mason, 5 carries for 25 yards. He's a big boy, by the way. I haven't seen him in a while. That's a big boy. I mean, he reminds me of Latavius Murray, somebody like that. He's a big carrier of the football.
He is.
You saw Debo have to get back there a couple times. Where does this offense, how does it change? Does Jimmy throw the football more if Elijah Mitchell, if he is out, or do you just say, you know what, Jordan Mason, we kept you on this roster for a reason. We got you on the team for a reason. Let's see what you can do.
Look, I think Kyle Shanahan has shown that he can develop running backs, whether it be mid-season through the offseason. Like having Christian McCaffrey is certainly a game changer. I think he's the first real superstar running back that Kyle Shanahan has had. And look, I love Elijah Mitchell. I think he's a physical runner. I think he really showed out last season. But let's not forget he was a 6th-round pick last year.
Right.
Like he wasn't supposed to be someone heading into next season. Jordan Mason is a guy that can do an all right job out of the backfield. I know Ty Davis-Price has been hurt, but I'm sure he'll be getting back in the mix when he becomes healthy. Like there are different running backs that Kyle Shanahan can use outside of just McCaffrey. I mean, even Debo, I know, is getting the ball out of the backfield. The running back position, although the Mitchell injury hurts, I don't think it necessarily hurts as much as a guy on the outside going down. Just because of how replaceable that position has been, not only just under Shanahan, but league-wide. Yeah, and I would tend to agree with you. And again, Christian McCaffrey, he solves a lot of issues. And albeit you didn't necessarily see that electric offense this game, we know that it's Kyle Shanahan, and you're gonna bet on him to figure it out. And again, you know, people were talking about, well, you know, as a runner, Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey, there might not be that much of a drop-off, and whatever the case is, the bottom line is this. Elijah Mitchell is not Christian McCaffrey. And the difference between Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey is a lot greater than probably the difference between Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason. So you would expect that the Niners are going to be okay. Now, have we seen Jordan Mason that much in real deal time? No, but we're probably about to. So again, if you're joining us, the Niners beat the Saints, New Orleans Saints, 13-0 at home in San Francisco/Santa Clara, and they take sole position of the NFC West as the Seahawks lose to the Raiders in overtime on a walk-off 86-yard tutty by Josh Jacobs. Let's go to the phone lines. We got OG, 888-957-9570, call line and text line if you want to be a part of the conversation. Let's go to OG, who is in Seattle. I was talking spicy about Seattle, so let's see what OG's got to say. What's up? You want to talk about Nick Bosa? You're on with Alan and Evan.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I'm a huge Niners. I'm a Bay Area guy, but I'm up here for work. Nick Bosa, I think we have to take a moment and recognize what we're seeing here. This guy is a Hall of Fame, future Hall of Famer. We're seeing a Hall of Fame career unfold before us. Nobody can block this guy legally. It is impossible. One-on-one, forget it. 2-on-1, they still have to hold, and then maybe if 2 guys hold, they can stop him. But there's holding on Nick Bosa on every play, and he still gets the game-closing sack. The guy is unbelievable.
Thanks for the call, OG. And he is, right? I feel that I'm not trying to do the comparison thing here, but when you talk about greatness, sometimes you get a little too used to it in a Steph Curry type way. So we don't start every show off saying, well, how about Nick Bosa? Because which we could. Because most of the time, we're starting to expect that from Nick Bosa. But what he is doing is nothing short of outstanding. It's nothing short of elite. And when you talk about guys that can get after the quarterback, he's got to be one of the first guys you mention, if not the first. And without him, this defense is completely different. He is what they call, if you want to look up gritty game in the dictionary and you see this game, a game wrecker. That's where you see Nick Bosa as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that the first time that Nick Bosa imposes his will on a game is on 4th and goal with 6.5 minutes left.
Right.
Like, I mean, I know he was all over the field. He made plays. He was held. He draws attention on every single play, which allows others to force pressure on Dalton. But it appears that even though he's always had the numbers, right, it seems like now he's taking that next step of, all right, I'm going to pick my spot.
Right.
Like, I know when my team needs me to make a play. We've seen a lot more of his sacks this year come on critical downs, come in critical situations like we saw today. He's got 11.5 sacks. He is one of the, if not the best pass rushers in football. He also plays the run well. He does everything for this defense. But the difference between Nick Bosa in years past and maybe a Von Miller, maybe a TJ Watt, like sometimes we would see those guys, Myles Garrett, other guys that we put Nick Bosa in the conversation in, and maybe some people have been hesitant to put him above, is because those guys, especially the likes of Von, would make plays down the stretch in playoff games like Von Miller did with the Rams last year against the Niners. That's where Nick Bosa, to me, is making the next step, and he's doing it like in his third year. It is not taking him that long to dominate this league, but he seems to even now be finding another level to get to. That's the scarier part for me, and what should be scary for opposing defensive coordinators is that Nick Bosa, even though he does do everything that the caller mentioned, still has another level to get to.
And he's just going to keep getting better, right? And you just obviously hope that health stays where it is and he can continue to do what he's doing for this Niner team. The streak continues. No scoring. Not only was there no scoring in the second half for that streak to continue, there was no scoring at all for the Saints. And they were moving the football. But, very similar to a lot of teams that when you get, it's almost as if once you get too close to the end zone, when things get tight, that's where you see, all right, who's organized on defense and who is elite on offense. And the Niners have had issues. Red zone scoring is not easy, right? To the you're just watching the game. Well, they're so close. Why can't they get it in? It's almost sometimes harder because you don't have as much space as you typically do. And that is where, all right, the Saints, sure, in the first half, they were doing some things to where the Niners didn't want to get beat over the top in the second half, and then in the second, they had some chunk plays. Then in the second half, the Niners tried to tighten it up and make sure there weren't the chunk plays, so that Andy Dalton was beating them underneath a little bit, getting down the field, moving the football. Then when they got to the red zone, it was just night-night, right? Steph Curry, night-night. They couldn't do anything. And the Niners, they almost knew that. I mean, they had multiple opportunities, and that's why going back to how you should look at this game, the Saints did have multiple opportunities, but a lot of people have opportunities to do a lot of things in life. And if you don't get it done, you don't get it done. It doesn't ultimately matter. And now you're looking at a situation where the Niners get to look at the NFC landscape and see, well, we're coming. And it might not have looked great, but it looks a lot better than an L, right? It looks a lot better. Oh, how'd Seattle do? Oh, they scored 34 points. That's great. Problem is, Raiders scored 40. And now you're trending down. Your stock is going down right now, and the Niners are going up. And you have to be excited if you're a Niners fan. Again, 888-957-9570 if you want to call in, be a part of the conversation. How are you feeling after this Niners W? Jimmy Garoppolo, 222 yards, 26 for 37. Not his best game. Elijah Mitchell banged up. We'll know more about him moving forward. And we'll get to our overtime overachievers. But I got to say, the thing about this offense, and OBJ has been brought up specifically, on a day like where Elijah Mitchell gets injured. Okay, well, can we do this? Can we do that? George Kittle, 3 receptions for 26 yards. Brandon Ayuk, 5 receptions for 65 yards. A quiet 65, by the way, and a quiet 5 receptions, I feel like. Debo, 3 receptions for 43 yards. Jawan Jennings, 6 receptions, 49 yards. He had the lone touchdown, and he was balling. He was, and he was balling so much to the fact where there was a Jawan Jennings drive. Like the drive right before the end of the half, there was plays of 13 yards, 12,
12, and then the 5-yard touchdown, which was tipped by Matthew, ends up in the hands of Jauan Jennings. But like he, along with, I think Ayuk last week and throughout the past 5 weeks for Ayuk, has established himself as a go-to guy for Jimmy, specifically on third down. But Jauan Jennings quietly has been one of the better conversion options for Jimmy G throughout this season. And it's partially because there's not as much attention paid to him as Debo or McCaffrey or Ayuk or Kittle. He's lower on the pecking order. But that allows him to do what he does to create some space with that 6'3" frame against, the nickel corner, against the second DB. Like, he is doing it when they need him to, and that is important. That is impressive. And this is also going to be necessary in certain games. Like, the 49ers today did not win in a pretty fashion by any means. But that's how you have to win down the stretch of the season. That's how you have to win in the playoffs. Not every game is going to be a blowout. Now, I know you're going to face better teams than New Orleans down the line. But you're going to have to win games that are ugly. You're going to have to win games where you're not at your best. And for them to, again, win by double digits. I know it was 13 points on offense. We'll spend this entire week critiquing what could have happened and what didn't. But right now, we need to give credit where credit is due, and that is to a team that has won 4 games in a row, to a team that has demonstrated it can win 4 games in 4 different manners. And that is something that carries and plays against any team. If you have different ways to beat an opponent, they're not able to figure out and game plan exactly one way. Like, everyone's going to try and take away McCaffrey. Everyone's going to try and make Jimmy throw the ball. Okay, well, some games is not going to be Ayuk. Some games is not going to be Kittle. Some games like today, it might be Jauan Jennings.
A win is a win is a win is a win. And the Niners, they do get a win as they beat the Saints 13-0. We got to get to a break. When we come back, we will give an injury report, and we will talk more about the NFC landscape. And how you feeling, Niner Nation? How you feeling, Niner faithful? Let us know. It's Alan South, Evan Giddings, 95.7 The Game.
Black Friday weekend is here. Once a year, you get the lowest prices on the top-rated brands of TV. Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs at stupid prices. You don't have to buy a no-name doorbuster TV with poor picture when you can get a good one for a few dollars more. Where's the best place to shop for these top brands? At Video Only, the only place where you can get better than Black Friday deals on Samsung, LG, and Sony. Better than clubs, better than online. Before you buy, check out the deals at Video Only, because if you don't, you'll be sorry.
1877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cards for Kids. 1877 Cards for Kids. Donate your card today.
1877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cars for Kids. 1877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
With car prices at an all-time high, our donors are now getting highest receipts ever. Donate at carsforkids.org, and your car can be picked up tomorrow.
1877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cars for Kids. 1877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Now accepting donations of land, homes, buildings, or any kind of real estate.
Everything, our farm, our stand, our pop-up shop. It really all started when we discovered the benefits of local, raw honey for our family.
And then we decided to turn it into a business.
We were looking for something to help us get up and running.
So we got the Chase Business Complete Banking Account.
It's more than a bank account. It comes with Quick Accept, which lets us take card payments anytime, anywhere in the U.S. using the Chase mobile app. Plus, we get same-day deposits at no extra cost. For us, it's more than honey. It's about sharing a little sweetness with the world.
Get the Chase Business Complete Banking Account with the essentials you need to help get your business going. Learn more at chase.com/business-complete-banking. Chase for business. Make more of what's yours. Quick Accept is not available in U.S. territories. Enrollment required. Usage subject to approval. Same-day deposits available for payments before 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday to Friday. Fees and rates apply for checking and processing. Limitations and restrictions apply. Participants compensated. Merchant services provided by Payment Tech LLC and WePay Inc. Subsidiaries of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank and a member FDIC.
Tune in to 95.7 The Game for Warriors Live, 60 minutes before tip-off of every Warriors game. Brought to you by Xfinity. Supercharge your home with supersonic Wi-Fi. Unbeatable internet, only from Xfinity.
UCSF Sports Medicine Center is dedicated to treating every type of athlete, from kids to adults. amateurs to elite professionals. As one of the best orthopedic programs in the nation, UCSF has programs to optimize an athlete's performance and the latest advancements to treat the most complex sports injuries. With locations throughout the Bay Area, now including Marin, Walnut Creek, and Redwood Shores, it's even easier to make an appointment today. Visit ucsfhealth.org so you can get cleared to play. UCSF Health, redefining possible.
Get a cash offer for your car, truck, or SUV today at your local Bay Area Chevy dealers. Selling has never been easier. Just bring it into a Bay Area Chevy dealer, get a free appraisal, and we'll make you a cash offer on the spot with no obligation to buy. We buy any make or model, paid off or not. Find your local Chevy dealer at BayAreaChevroletDealers.com.
Meet Joe A,
Hi.
Joe B,
Hello.
and Joe C.
What's up?
3 everyday Joes perfecting their banking with Chase. Joe A is locking his lost debit card with the Chase mobile app. Joe B is cruising toward his new ride with AutoSave. And Joe C's Chase banker is helping him budget to go back to school. Tools that help protect, support for what's next. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Messaging and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
At the United States Postal Service, we're here to deliver fast and reliable service to help you get holiday ready. We offer free package pickup and deliver free shipping supplies to your address. So whether you're in Garland, Texas, Rudolph, Wisconsin, or anywhere in between, we're making it easier for you to spread festive cheer this holiday season. USPS, delivering for America. For all your holiday needs, including info about free shipping supplies, free package pickup availability, and restrictions, go to USPS.com/holidays.
What's worse than calling your groin your junk? Treating it like junk. Respect your pubic region with Gillette Intimate. Gentle and easy pubic hair care from America's #1 trusted men's grooming brand. Gillette, the best a man can get. Buy now at Walmart.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMC FM at HD1 San Francisco. Always live on the free Odyssey app. Now, back to Overtime with Kyle Madsen and Alan Stiles on 95.7 The Game.
We are back. Overtime, 95.7 The Game. Alan Stiles and Evan Giddings filling in for Kyle Madsen after the Niners best the New Orleans Saints 13-0. Just fireworks all over the field, wasn't it? I mean, it was just electric to watch. Well, maybe not, but the bottom line is the Niners got a W, and a lot of teams didn't today.
I think you're talking about the who's or don'ts as opposed to the who's or do's when you come to the firecrackers on the field.
Yeah, you know, it was basically like that one uncle on 4th of July who promises, hey, I'm going to have this set up for us, and he just doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. He gets one here, one there, but ultimately it was a bit of a letdown. But it was okay. It was okay, and that's basically how I feel after watching the Niners game, and then you see the Seahawks losing, you feel even better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a Thanksgiving analogy we can make here. Like, it started out and it was a lot more cranberry sauce than stuffing, and
right.
You know, like the equation just wasn't right on your plate. Right. But then eventually, when you eat too much of the cranberry sauce, you realize and you look up, oh, I got the rest of the food left, and maybe the plate's looking a little bit better than it should, or than it felt like at the beginning of the meal. But no, I mean, this was a win that the 49ers. Like, I don't know if they needed it, but they certainly should have won the game. They covered, which great teams do. Yep. But their defense maintains its, level that we saw earlier in the year, which was on a historic pace. If they're healthy on defense, like this team is going to be extremely hard to beat. Now, I think Jimmy Garoppolo today didn't play at a level that a lot of people want to see from him, especially coming off of maybe his best statistical performance against Arizona on Monday night. They're going to need Jimmy Garoppolo to be better if you want to beat better teams, such as the Miami Dolphins, who are coming into town next week. But if you can run the football effectively, which against a Saints defense that, again, got two defensive linemen back, two starting defensive linemen back, Marcus Davenport, along with Cameron Jordan, they can create pressure with 4. I know it sounds weird, but the Saints had the most sacks in football since week 3 entering the game. They do put pressure on the quarterback, and they did so against Garoppolo today. He looked uncomfortable, and as much as he did make a lot of the oh-no throws, obviously the interception that got called back stands out, he also made a couple of improvisational plays that I didn't really expect Jimmy Garoppolo to be able to make. I mean, there was one play where he was going down and kind of tossed it to the side to McCaffrey for like a 3 or 4 yard gain. That was nothing into something. There was even a play that didn't turn to anything to Ayuk, but he was pointing down the field like, Ayuk, turn around, go long. I don't see that from Jimmy very often.
He was out here really, really point guard and doing a whole bunch of stuff. So you could tell that his confidence is definitely still there. We know that.
Yeah, no, it is. And a lot of it has to do with the way that his offensive line has played throughout the season. And I know that they were kind of dealt a blow today with Spencer Burford going down, did not return. And so Daniel Brunskill, who's kind of rotated in at each of those guard spots along with Banks, like that's maybe where something we can keep an eye on. The offensive line, which to me was a question coming into the season, outside of Trent Williams, is still somewhat of a question mark, but because they've had guys to be able to rotate in and out, can stay fresh just like they do on the defensive line. If they're a bit thin there, that could be something to sort of keep an eye on. But at the end of the day, you look up, you see 7-4, you're like, man, this team should be 7-4.
They should be.
They should be. I know they shouldn't have lost maybe some of the games that they did earlier this season. You could say today maybe they didn't have a winning effort against New Orleans, but the Saints also didn't deserve to win the game.
No.
Like they had their chances and they could not take advantage even of some of the 49ers mistakes. I know we glorified Nick Bosa and talked about how great he was. Well, he also made kind of a boneheaded play on a 4th and 1 by hitting Taysom Hill late after the play, roughing the passer, extended the drive, but then the rest of the defense picked him up and sort of swept that under the rug. That's what the defense did today for the 49ers, is they swept all the bad that we saw on offense under the rug and ended up with that big old goose egg.
Exactly. And to blank a team in this NFL, that's impressive.
Yeah.
It's just impressive. I mean, not even a field goal. So what people are going to do is, all right, the Saints were 4-7 coming in. The Niners were 6-4 coming in. All right, well, I mean, the Niners should have done this, or the Saints, they're not even good. But you have to look past the initial Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston and what's going on with the Saints and really dig into those details as far as getting those pass rushers back, where those defensive ranks are. So there is no way to look at this other than a really good win for the Niners. Not the prettiest, but they still got it done. Wanted to get into the injury report. Jimmy G, sore knee, will get a checkup. Elijah Mitchell, feared to have suffered a sprained MCL, but not the same as a previous injury and not as serious, but they do think he might miss a couple weeks. Spencer Burford, as Evan talked about as well, has an ankle injury, not a high ankle sprain, but an ankle injury that they're going to look at as well. And we'll obviously figure out more as we get deeper into this week because, not to look forward too much, but you almost have to because of what got released today and who the Niners play next week. And the Dolphins, this is going to be, now you talk about, I will say this, and Tua was spinning that thing today all over the field, albeit against
the Houston Texans.
The Texans. But I'll put it to you like this. The Niners can't play like this offensively next week and beat the Dolphins. They can't. There is no way. As much as, okay, you got out of here with your gritty win, that's great. They can't do this against the Dolphins or they will lose.
Yeah, and look, this is a Dolphins team that also gives up points. So as much as it is a test for the offense, because you wouldn't want to see Jimmy show up the way he did today against Miami next week, I also think Miami's defense is a little susceptible. Like they can give up points. The difference is they score a lot of points. And I would go as far as to say they have the best wide receiving duo in the league when it comes to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They put up points, and Mike McDaniel is going to be back in town. It's not just Jeff Wilson Jr., it's not just Raheem Mostert, but it's the guy that was responsible for a lot of their success here in San Francisco, and that's Mike McDaniel, who's done a fantastic job in his first year as head coach and has an 8-3 record as atop the AFC West. Right now, it's going to be two division number ones going head-to-head. I can't wait for that game because you got the Dolphins on a 5-game win streak. Now you got the Niners on a 4-game win streak. Both of them have looked so-and-so throughout some of those wins, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a heavyweight prize fight, and I expect to see a lot more points than I did today, specifically from the 49ers.
888-957-9570, call line and Xfinity Mobile text line if you want to be a part of the conversation. And we know you do. How are you feeling, Faithful? How are you feeling after the Niners get a W against the Saints? How are you feeling about this week? Are you feeling better about the Niners? Are you pumping the brakes a little bit after what you saw them do against the Cardinals? All right, maybe they're not the greatest show on turf. Not yet. but they're still getting W's. The 203 is chiming in. Anytime the Niners and Dubs win, it is a great day, and that is correct. That is correct. 442 is chiming in as well. 49ers and Warriors get Sunday wins. It's a great day. It's a great day. You got to enjoy your holiday, hopefully eat some good food, and you get to end it with 2 dubs for your favorite teams. But I will say this. As far as what the Niners didn't do well in this game, and they were able to come out with the W, Kyle Shanahan, what type of grade would you give him today? Because I felt as if there was a little bit of, yes, they're facing a better defense, and he got a little bit, as the kids say, he got a little bit scary. He got not scared, they say scary nowadays. Why they say that, I have no clue. Because it was a lot of Christian McCaffrey. Then in the second half, it was almost as if I don't want to, and I don't want to say, I mean, it's possible, maybe, because you can't think that far ahead of it, but maybe he didn't necessarily open up the playbook as much because it's the Saints, and unless they score, we're not really too worried. I mean, how would you assess it? He had that great challenge call that worked and things like that. The 4th and goal, which I believe Jimmy Garoppolo, the first look was for Kittle. They covered Kittle well. Christian McCaffrey was wide open, albeit that wasn't the first look. That's something where if it's last week against the Cardinals, the way they were rolling, Jimmy probably gets that done. Instead, he tries to scramble and doesn't get there. How would you assess Kyle Shanahan?
I would give him a B, and the reason being I would probably give him a C+, B- for his play calling, but I do believe a part of the frustration with Shanahan in games of past and years past has been the lack of aggression. And we did see that today. So I do have to give him credit for that. You know, maybe it's kind of teetering on a B-, but I would say somewhere in 83, 84 for Kyle Shanahan today if we're going on the 100-point scale, but just because I liked him going for it on 4th down early in the game. Jimmy Garoppolo makes a play on 3rd 13, first drive. Ray McLeod makes a nice catch on the right sideline, and then you give it to your go-to guy. You give it to Christian McCaffrey up the gut. You don't eventually score in the red zone, and that's where some of the play calling comes into effect, but you go for it when it is time to. And I know we're kind of joking about it. The 4th down, the second one that they went for and didn't convert, 4th and goal inside the goal to go in the red zone. It was a design play for Kittle. It got blown up quickly by the Saints. Jimmy Garoppolo tries to sprint up the middle, falls short of the red zone. Like, that's to me where the critique of Shanahan is fair and comes into play is, well, you got to be better than that. Like, even before 4th down, I want to see just something that is a little more dynamic. It just seems like he gets kind of cookie cutter and conservative inside the red zone, and I'm sure part of that is because he knows he's got the number 1 ranked defense on the other side. Yeah. And so even if you don't get the score, you know that you're getting 3 points out of it, or 2, you're pinning your opponent back inside their own 5-yard line against the number 1 defense that doesn't give up much, nevertheless 95 yards on a given drive. So I do think that Kyle Shanahan is leaning into the identity of his team a bit more, which I give him credit for. But when it comes to the play calling, for a guy as imaginative and creative as I see between the 20s, there doesn't seem to be as much of that inside the 20s. That, to me, is still a bit of an issue. He doesn't have that Andy, now they don't have Patrick Mahomes, but Andy Reid, what we've seen him do in the red zone. Now, they got Kelsey taking snaps and doing a lot of things that are just outside of the book in terms of what you typically see. So you don't have to go that crazy, but I mean, maybe, and I don't know if maybe it's just from just the old school, how he got brought up with his dad. You don't need to run the football in first and goal, 2nd and goal every single time. You don't have to do that. You know that, right? Kyle, it's not a rule. You don't have to do that. And they tend to continue to do that. Next thing you know, it's 3rd and goal, and everybody in the stadium knows they're throwing, and next thing you know, it's 4th and goal. And it's some of those things where maybe you throw on 1st and goal and mix it up. And I get it. When Elijah Mitchell, who, again, is going to be out for a couple weeks with a sprained MCL, it looks like he gets a running start. I don't know. The running start that he gets and the way he hits that hole, it is hard to believe that you couldn't do that 4 times and score. But this is the NFL. And when you stack the box and when things get tight, sometimes it's not going to work. And you put yourself in those positions. And again,
early on when they did that with Christian McCaffrey, for as good as Christian McCaffrey is at just about everything, that is the one thing I would not say is Christian McCaffrey's forte. You're not going to put him on the goal line and just hammer it with him. That's not, he can do that, but when, again, everybody in the stadium knows a run is coming, he's not necessarily the running back for that. And when Kyle Shanahan called that play, I'm thinking to myself, I mean, that's not really, it's like in basketball, if somebody that slashes a lot, he's a driver, he's a passer, yeah, he can make the occasional three, he can make a couple threes, but that's not what he's here for. That's not necessarily what Christian McCaffrey's there to do. So I would have liked to see Elijah Mitchell there just because of all the things that I said before, but, I don't know. If you're giving Kyle Shanahan a B, I mean, you can't get any worse than a B and a win, right? That's not possible.
No, and I think there was some things that he certainly could have done better. Look, they didn't even rush for 100 yards today. I think there were 3.3 yards per carry on the ground. Like, they were not effective. But it is interesting to me how when they get inside the 10 and even inside the 5, how there's less of a push from the offensive line than we see between the 20s. Obviously, there's more of a threat to pass than inside those kind of tight quarters. But what I see is the Saints, again, we talked about in the first segment, but adopting kind of what the Chargers along with the Cardinals tried to do, which was stack the box. They just have more of a personnel to stop you. Or if they decide that they want to hone in on the run, right, that they want to put 7 or 8 in the box at a given time, they're going to be more effective at implementing that than the teams that you've played in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I do see more of that inside the red zone, and that is why maybe there needs to be more stretches and trying to kind of spread out this defense, whereas we haven't seen it as much. I mean, I know there was a play on third down before they had to go for it on 4th and goal where people were kind of coming down Jimmy G's road for not looking to his backside and seeing Christian McCaffrey wide open in the flat. It was a trips play to the right, and he quote-unquote missed McCaffrey. But that's, to me, a situation where Kyle Shanahan is the play caller. That does come down on him, because that play, at least from what I could gather, is not supposed to go to McCaffrey. No. McCaffrey's a decoy to take attention away from the other side of the field, which is where the ball is supposed to go. I think it went eventually to Juwan Jennings, and he came up just short. But that's a play where, look, I want to see McCaffrey touch the ball inside the 5. Mm-hmm. And he didn't get the ball enough for me. I know Elijah Mitchell is more kind of your bruising back, but McCaffrey, he can go over the top. He's athletic to jump over. He's athletic to get sideline to sideline, to try and bend the edge. He's also, I think, physical enough, as we saw in the 4th and 1 play on the first drive. If you want to try and run it up the middle, he can fight and get you that extra yard. I know that maybe a New Orleans Saints game, in Week 12 is not as important as Week 18 and beyond. Mm-hmm. And that's maybe where we're going to see more of McCaffrey, and Kyle Shanahan is kind of saving his cards. But it's becoming more of a reoccurring theme that inside, deep in the, not just like at the 19 or 18 yard line, but deep inside the red zone, the 49ers have had trouble converting red zone chances into scores. They did it a bunch versus Arizona. They have not been able to do it as consistently as I would like to see this team that can supposedly run the ball do.
Once again, 13-0. Niners beat the Saints. Go ahead on to take first place in the NFC West as the Seahawks lose to the Raiders. And when you look at this Saints team, I mean, that play by Taysom Hill that ended up getting called back, the frozen rope down the middle of the field, big chunk play. Again, opportunities that they just couldn't convert. And the reason you can be happy about this win, I'm the king of both things can be true. You can be happy about this win, but also say, this is probably not going to fly next week. It's because there were situations that better teams, they're not going to let slip through their fingers, right? The Dolphins next week, the way they're playing, they're not going to let opportunities like that slip through their fingers. The teams that the Niners have coming up, you have the Dolphins and then the Bucks, who are just holding on for dear life to try to make something happen, even though they're in that terrible division, so they'll probably be fine. You got the Seahawks that are going to be raring to go. The Commanders get another W today. And obviously the Raiders are trying to come back into relevancy. And the Cardinals get a good win today. Or did they beat the Chargers?
They did not. The Chargers won 25-24.
They looked really good, though. They looked really good, but the Chargers did end up pulling it out. But all these teams, any given Sunday, they're playing decent football. They're playing good football. And you could probably say, looking at the Niners schedule now, depending on how you look at the Raiders, and we could all probably say the Raiders are underachieving, and the Cardinals are a wild card at this point, you could probably say the Niners just played the worst team that they're going to play for the rest of the season.
Yeah, perhaps. But I also think that, and this is, well, I'm glad you brought up the quote-unquote frozen rope that was missed by Dalton to Olave. Mm-hmm. It did take a Shanahan challenge,
right?
Which maybe should have been called down on the field as incomplete, but it took a Shanahan challenge to recognize, reverse that play. That's something he also gets credit for. I do think that this was, maybe we're establishing like a C effort from the Niners overall, mainly due to the lack of offense, lack of creativity in the red zone. Maybe a B, a C plus, B minus, like that.
I'd go B minus.
B minus. We're being fair. B minus. If this is a B minus effort from the 49ers, and you still shut out your opponent, you still win by 13 points. Mm-hmm. Like that's in a pretty good place for me. Like if you have a distinct, like unequivocal another level to get to. We've seen already the A+, probably last week against the Cardinals. Even Kyle Shanahan came out and said, I don't know if it was after the Cardinals game or during the week, but he came out and said, like, hey, guys, that's offensively, that's not going to happen every week. Mm-hmm. Like, where every single mouth gets fed offensively is not going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden the only mouth that gets fed this week is Juwan Jennings, but if you're telling me that this is a B- and you still handled business, you still I would say pretty dominantly took down a New Orleans team that was asking to just be put away. I don't necessarily think that the Niners can't then elevate themselves next week against Miami. Like, if they bring the same level that they did today, they might be in trouble. But we know that there's another level that they can get to. It's not like this is the first time we're kind of seeing this from San Francisco.
And again, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., I think it was mostly Raheem Mostert, had some things to say. They poking the bear a little bit. And
I kind of think that may have been why Raheem Mostert was out today.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Might be trying to save himself for a revenge game next week.
I agree with that. Paraphrasing here, now we have a quarterback that can sling it, was Raheem Mostert talking about Tua. And, obviously that's a bit of a slight at Jimmy. So that'll be popcorn. That'll be popcorn next week. We'll get into that a little bit more in this next segment. I want to talk about more than halfway through the third. The Saints, as we mentioned, they were getting a lot of underneath stuff, and they started to gain a little bit of momentum. DeMeco Ryans, this is the portion of the show where we give DeMeco Ryans his due, because it's always time to give DeMeco Ryans his due. So they finally get him to 3rd and 5, the Niners do. He dials up the heat. Now, we've talked about before, his blitzes have been very traditional. They come when you expect them to. But here's the thing. As certain pitchers have said, I'll tell you what I'm throwing and you still can't hit it. DeMeco Ryans, with the personnel that he has, will say, yeah, I know this is a blitzing down, and we're going to blitz anyway, and it's not going to make a difference. So they bring the heat. That next play, the Saints line up to go for it, and there's a false start. And then after that, they missed a field goal. So kudos to DeMeco Ryans, but also, again, the Saints are just a bit of a mess. So both things can be true. The Niners did what they're supposed to do. I think what you're going to maybe worry about, and why people have worried about the traditional blitzes and traditional timing, is that can you do that against quarterbacks that are a bit better than Andy Dalton, right? Like again, next week against the Dolphins, you do that against Tua. They literally, I watched a lot of that game before it just got out of hand today. Tua, everybody can talk about, sometimes he underthrows the ball, underthrows his receivers, things like that. He gets that thing out quick. I'll tell you that much. So if you're going to bring the heat, you better get to him.
No, that's true. But I also don't think, look, in late situations in games in particular on 3rd down or 4th down, like it is traditional to bring a blitz, but a lot of teams do that. Mm-hmm. Like the Chiefs specifically, Steve Spagnuolo dials up the blitz almost every single 3rd down late in games, like because you're trying to get to the quarterback. You want to make sure he has less than 3 seconds to get that ball out. I remember an old defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, great DC, Dick LeBeau, would time blitzes in order to make quarterbacks not have time late in games. So DeMeco Ryans, yes, he does pick his spots, and they may be more traditional, I guess, easier to sort of predict, but that doesn't make them any less effective, especially when you have a guy like Fred Warner who runs a 4.5 breathing down your neck and knows how to time the snap to the point where he's in the backfield the moment you snap the ball.
Right. And I mean, Bosa, like you talked about, played it perfectly, and whether he was offsides or not, doesn't matter. It didn't get called.
I personally thought he jumped before the play.
The broadcasters thought that he did too, and he probably did, but if you don't get called, you don't get called,
there
right?
You go.
All right, we got to get to a break. When we get back, we will give out our overtime overachievers, have our last thoughts on the game, and looking forward to next week and the landscape of the NFC. More of your calls and texts as well. It's Alan South, Evan Giddings, 95.7 The Game. It's overtime.
I want winners.
Hey, folks, this is it. The best weekend of the year for buying a TV. Forget inflation, because now you've got deflation with Black Friday pricing on top-rated brands like Samsung, LG, and Sony. Where's the best place to shop? It's not the clubs or online. Join the smart shoppers heading for video only, because they've got better than Black Friday deals. That's right, better. Don't believe it? Then bring your prices to video only and compare before you buy. Or you'll be sorry. At Video Only, you won't find huge stores with refrigerators or microwaves, but you will find the best deals on top-rated TVs, soundbars, and monitors. Shop around. Just make sure you visit Video Only, because if you don't,
you'll be sorry.
In Mountain View, San Mateo, Union City, Dublin, and San Rafael. Video Only.
It's go time, California. The Black Friday Sell-a-thon is going on now. Our best selection of new Ford inventory is here. It's go time. Now get 1.9% APR for 60 months plus $1,000 retail bonus cash on a 2022 Ford F-150, Explorer, and Escape. The lots are filling up, so that means it's go time. Go to the Black Friday Sell-a-thon at your California Ford dealer today. Now during the Black Friday Sell-a-thon, get low leases on select 2022 and 2023 Ford vehicles. It's go time. Only at your California Ford dealer. Hurry in, it all ends November 28th. Not all buyers will qualify for Ford credit financing. 1.9% APR financing for 60 months at $1,748 per month per $1,000 finance regardless of down payment. Program 21352. Not available on Raptor, Super Crew Tremor, and Super Crew Lightning. Bonus cash includes 1,000 retail bonus cash. Residency restrictions apply. Take new retail delivery from an authorized Ford dealer stock by 11/28/22. See dealer for qualifications and complete details.
At Right Way Garage Doors, we consider what we do inspired craftsmanship. We see our craftsmen as artists using wood, glass, and metal as their brushes. Your home is their canvas. Their work inspired by the vision you have for your home's first impression. Right Way Garage Doors has been delivering the highest quality work with the right value and the right customer experience for 42 years. For a limited time, save up to $500 plus get no interest financing for up to 24 months. Call 877-DOOR-808 or visit rwgaragedoors.com.
Alice at 97.3 is celebrating the return of Alice in Winterland. Friday, December 2nd at the SAP Center in San Jose. Starring John Mayer. One Republic.
See you at Alice in Winterland.
Kelsey Ballerini.
Matt Nathanson.
And Lizzie McAlpine. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster. Everything Winterland at radioalice.com.
Get a cash offer for your car, truck, or SUV today at your local Bay Area Chevy dealers. Selling has never been easier. Just bring it into a Bay Area Chevy dealer, get a free appraisal, and we'll make you a cash offer on the spot with no obligation to buy. We buy any make or model, paid off or not. Find your local Chevy dealer at BayAreaChevroletDealers.com.
This week at Staples, save 60% on.
Thanks for your business this year.
Save 60% on.
Happy holidays, Nana.
Save 60% on.
You are cordially invited.
Right now at Staples, you can save 60% on custom printed holiday cards and invitations. So you can say, thanks for a great year, happy holidays, or come on over, all for less. For everything you need printed this holiday, go to Staples, the working and learning store. In-store and online. Ends 12/3. Exclusions and restrictions apply.
Where do Black Friday deals feel like steals? Where can you find holiday decor to deck every door? Where do holiday savings end in celebrating? Lowe's, actually. Black Friday is happening now. Get 2 select 1-quart poinsettias for $3 while supplies last. Get the deal before it's gone and celebrate all season long at Lowe's. Home to any possibility. Offer valid through 11/30. In-store only while supplies last. Limit 8 per customer. U.S. only. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Now, back to Overtime with Kyle Madsen and Alan Stiles on 95.7 The Game.
30 more minutes. We're rocking with you. Alan Stiles and Evan Giddings filling in for Kyle Madsen on Overtime as we break down the Niners, and they get a W, 13-0 against the New Orleans Saints, the Nolans. Don't some people say Nolans Saints, right?
Big Easy.
The Big Easy.
No
right?
Law. I think my favorite is No Law.
Isn't it NOLA?
Yeah, but it's a play on words because there's no laws in New Orleans.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Well, they send them back to no law to have some crocodiles and alligators with a big fat L as the Niners take care of business, and the Seahawks do not take care of business. 888-957-9570. 30 more minutes if you want to be a part of the conversation on the call line or Xfinity Mobile text line. And we want to know if you feel any better about the Niners after this game. Do you feel worse? Did it bring you down a notch from last week where they looked like they'd never score less than 25 again? Also, if you have an overtime overachiever, let us know who you're giving your helmet to. I'll get it started off right now, Evan. I'm going Juwan Jennings. I'm just keeping it simple. I mean, he balled. And this is a guy for me. Even before they got Christian McCaffrey, I looked around and said, where are his targets going to go? I mean, you got Kittle, you got Debo. I know they had the same thing last year, and he started to come on. He's almost like that guy that when you are game planning for the Niners, it's no disrespect to Juwan Jennings. I just can't afford to make time and circle you either. I already have to circle Debo. I already have to circle Kittle. I already have to circle Christian McCaffrey and even Elijah Mitchell, who, again, knee injury, out a couple weeks, sprained MCL. We'll have more as the week goes on. But I already have to look at all these guys and make sure that they don't beat me. So if, no disrespect, if we lose because Juwan Jennings beats us, that might be how we have to go. And the thing is, we saw from last year, Juwan Jennings can beat you. He can be the one to beat you.
He beat the Saints on an entire drive. I mean, we kind of laid out all the catches that he made in the drive that led to the lone touchdown scored today by the 49ers, which, of course, he caught. So I think, look, Juwan is a serviceable wide receiver that Jimmy Garoppolo clearly trusts, and he's just a Niner guy. He fits right into the system. If he gets no targets, he's totally cool with it. If he gets, as many as he got today when it comes to targets, he had 7 targets, caught 6 of them. He's obviously fine there. The average depth of target is not crazy, but it doesn't need to be because he's your perfect option on 3rd and short. He could be an option on 3rd and long, as we've seen him throughout the season do. And he can create space with long and lengthy arms. And look, and he seems to be just a consummate pro about it all. So I'm not mad at that whatsoever.
Who's yours?
I'm going to go with Fred Warner. Now, I know that Talanoa Hufanga has had kind of a nose for the football, especially in tight spots like we saw against Alvin Kamara down the stretch there of the game, forcing the ball loose at the goal line, recovered by Dre Greenlaw. But Fred Warner literally, Allen, did everything you could do on the field today as a member of the defense. 7 tackles. He had a quarterback hit, obviously was big on the blitz late in the game. 2 passes defended today in coverage. And I know that Hufanga is going to be one that gets remembered for the turnover late, but Fred Warner was one who forced the first fumble of the game. And mind you, coming into the game, the Niners had forced 1 fumble this season. Fred Warner's the one that forced the first one loose, which to me set the tone defensively that they were going to be rocking the Saints all game long. And he is where everything starts defensively. He's all over the field. He's able to make plays in the pass, make plays in the run. He's the captain of this defense. And even though the statistics, the total tackles may not have been number 1 on the team, he's the guy that everyone looks to. He's the place where the camera pans to at the end of most defensive plays because he always seems to be around the ball. Whenever Fred Warner is on the field, which he is pretty much 99% of the time, the 49ers have a chance to do what they did today, which is force a 4th second-half shutout and establish 0 points for the New Orleans Saints.
I think that's a great pick, and he's another guy. We talked about Nick Bosa, how we don't start every show anymore talking about how we're in awe, and maybe not to say we're taking it for granted. Are we getting used to the excellence a bit? Fred Warner's another guy who great season last year, beginning of this season, right? Had some good games, had some games where he missed some tackles, did some things, still trying to find his way, still trying to continue to show people he is that dude. And that's a game where he did just that. So good pick on your part. 888-957-9570 if you want to let us know who your overtime achievers are as well.
I know we got about 20 minutes here left. You want to stir up the pot a bit?
Oh, I'm always ready to stir up the pot.
Did you see what Jimmy Garoppolo's record was at the end of his 57th start in the NFL?
I did, but I want you to tell me again anyway.
He's 40-17. It's the same record through 57 starts as Steve Young.
That guy was pretty good.
Not bad. I just wanted to throw that out there and see if fans would bite, just because I know today was not Jimmy Garoppolo's best day, but that's kind of the polarizing issue with him is that he's 26-37, 220, a touchdown, probably should have had a pick, might have even been a pick six, 95 quarterback rating, and he gets the win because the defense was so dominant today. It's almost like Jimmy Garoppolo, it feels like a lot of times 49ers fans think he gets saved in games where he doesn't play well. And then in the games he does do well, it's, well, but look at the other ones like today, and you're going to see a guy that, has a ton of flaws. To me, look, I know he went down with the kind of the knee-ish injury, but he stayed in the game, was relatively tough. Is going to get checked up on his non-surgically repaired knee. Later on this week. But Jimmy G, just like the 49ers, man, they just find ways to win.
You got to find ways to win, especially when it's this time of the season, right? And you don't have any more mulligans. You use them. You lost to teams that you probably shouldn't have earlier in the season. Now your backs are up against it. And honestly, not necessarily the best business model, but they did the same thing last year, and they're starting to round into form. Something I heard from Ron Rivera that I'm going to continue to say as he's using it for Taylor Heineke, but the same can be said about Jimmy Garoppolo. When they were talking about the Commanders talking about bringing back Carson Wentz and what's the deal there, and asked about how Taylor Heineke wasn't actually playing that well, but you decided to keep him as a starter, Ron Rivera said the bottom line is Taylor doesn't have to play well. Because regardless of whether he plays well or not, the team plays better when he's in. And it's the first time I heard a quarterback or a coach or a quarterback be talked about in that way that wasn't necessarily about stats, because we've been trying for so long to quantify what Jimmy Garoppolo is, what tier he is, what level he is. The bottom line is it's very simple. When he's in, most of the time the team wins. And that's it. That's it. Sometimes you can just simplify things and boil them down, and it's that simple. Some of these guys, galvanizers, they get the troops going. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be that. The question is, when you get to the playoffs and you're facing teams that are going to capitalize on your mistakes and they're going to put more pressure on you, and kind of the limitations of a quarterback start to creep up on you, or you need someone to be that much better just in terms of their skill and their arm talent and things like that. When you need somebody to take over a game, can he do that? In the past, he hasn't been able to do it. Not in the playoffs. He also didn't have Christian McCaffrey these last couple years. So what will that change? Wanted to get into some sound here from Kyle Shanahan. We're talking about this offense and how it obviously didn't look like it did out in Mexico, but let's see what Kyle Shanahan had to say about how he thought the offense looked.
It was a grind, man. I give a lot of credit to their defense. We had an idea coming in that it could be like that. I also think we didn't play our best either. When you go against a defense like that, we thought it would be tough, but we believe we should have scored on those red zone attempts that we had. A couple missed opportunities, a couple mistakes, too many penalties it seemed like. But there, once you saw in the fourth quarter, once they came away with no points and some of the injuries our guys had, it was great that our guys just kept coming back out, grinded it out, and were able to finish with the ball in our hands.
Do you think, and he mentioned the red zone, and we're starting to look forward here. All right, you got it done. Look, the bottom line is the Saints, this was very close to a trap game because we know what's coming up. They got through the trap game. That's all you needed to do. Doesn't matter how it looked. But in terms of the red zone and some of the issues there, the opportunities, and Obviously, the Dolphins were spinning that thing today, but they were also playing the Texans, and the Niners defense, last time I checked, is a little bit better. And as we can say anything we want about Jimmy Garoppolo, he ain't Kyle Allen, all right? We're not going to say that.
Yeah.
So even though the Dolphins are going to be facing a better defense, they are still electric, and they've been doing it basically all year. And like you said, they're on a win streak as well. Do you think it's a situation where Kyle Shanahan goes and talks to the coaching staff and says, okay, we got to figure out this red zone thing. Do we need to create new plays? What do you think they do? Because I feel like that's the one thing, besides when you're playing these really lackluster teams like what the Cardinals put out on the field last week, you got to figure it out. I feel like too many times there have been games where you have either won or lost, and that is part of the conversation. They don't have a problem getting to the red zone.
No, they don't. But I'm curious too. Okay, so like, let's say Kamara doesn't fumble in the goal line with 11:05. Maybe he gets in. The Saints come away with some points. Then you're looking at a one-score game. Mm-hmm. I'm curious how Kyle Shanahan approaches the rest of the game from there on out, knowing he doesn't have a double-digit lead. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Garoppolo in the first half, I know we're talking about some of the throws he didn't make or got the benefit of the doubt on from the referees. First half, he was 20 of 28, 175, a touchdown, was 6 of 8 on third down. Like, he was pretty good. Mm-hmm. But in the second half, he didn't throw the ball. Like, he was 6 of 9 for 47 yards. They didn't really move the ball through the air because Kyle Shanahan shrunk back into a shell a little bit. He put the ball on the ground. I think he also saw the fact that McCaffrey went to the sideline, that Mitchell went out. I know he returned, and he kind of mentioned the soundbite that guys were fighting through some injuries. Deebo Samuel had a quad contusion that he battled. Burford went out. Like, I do think that Kyle went into conservative Kyle mode a little bit, partially because he had a 13-point lead, but also partially because he saw some flies begin to drop, and he didn't want any more to go down.
Also, would you say that even though it got called back, everybody, and Kyle's hearing all the talk, even Jimmy, when he first came in for Trey Lance, it felt like 2017 all over again. Let Jimmy jacket, all these different types of things that we've been hearing. Do you think that pick, that even though it didn't end up actually being real because it got called back, do you think the pick scared Kyle a bit when he saw that happen? Oh, I guess Jimmy still got that in him. Let me make sure we get this W and get out of here, because the Saints, like you said, on our defense, they can't score. So I'm not gonna try to give Jimmy better numbers, and then next thing you know, there's a pick six.
No, I'm with you. I think that's a good point. And, I don't want to say that Kyle Shanahan is scared, but I'm sure that definitely was oh boy, like, I mean, we all jumped off the couch as soon as he grabbed that ball, started running the other way, because immediately that can cut the score in half. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a game-changing play that if your offense is not clicking, then can immediately, open you up to being susceptible to a late game comeback, which has happened to Kyle Shanahan in the past. So I don't think that's an unfair criticism. It's the situation where I think he wants to save Jimmy from himself. And especially because of how much pressure New Orleans generated. I know that maybe Garoppolo was better throwing the ball in the first half, but that pressure slowly began to wear down the offensive line. Trent Williams, I'm sure, is going to come out Pro Football Focus and have a good grade. I saw him get beat behind the line of scrimmage for maybe the first time ever. Yeah. Like, it wasn't like Garoppolo had a ton of time in the pocket back there. So I could definitely see Kyle Shanahan saying, look, we got a 13-point lead. The one thing we cannot do is turn over the football. Let's put the ball on the ground and put the ball into the hands of our defense. It's almost like, like the Chiefs run up the score. They're going to try to run away from you and beat you with their offense. The Niners, it's almost like they're saying, hey, we think our defense is this damn good that the moment we have a lead, we're going to lean on them instead of lean on the side of the ball that produces points.
So, as we mentioned, you could make the argument for the Raiders or whatever version of the Cardinals the Niners play next. The Saints are probably the worst team that the Niners had left on their schedule. So in terms of what you're talking about, let's get up and then we don't have to, we can just trust our defense. Number one.
Still got the Cardinals.
Still got the Cardinals. We don't know. They look good today. They look good today, but you never know with them. And by that time, that's in January, who in the world knows what will be going on with the Cardinals, to be completely honest with you. But you talk about, okay, once we get a lead, we're just going to lean on our defense. What happens, one, if they don't get a lead? And what happens, two, when you're facing better offenses? And we've seen the Niners, for as good as they are, when you face, you're only going to face Mahomes one more time, that would be in the Super Bowl. But when you face the Dolphins next week, when you face I would even put the Bucs up there, how are you going to react to that? How are you going to make sure there is a balance between, I don't want to put Jimmy and the team in bad situations, but if you go too conservative, you will lose. But we understand that you could do this against the Saints. And look, we call Kyle a genius for a reason. At least a lot of people do. You have to come out guns blazing next week against the Dolphins. You have to. You have to take some chances. And for everybody, let me just say this. I don't think anybody is going to be issuing any more apologies to Jimmy after this game. Not that he played bad, but everybody that wanted to give him apologies and we're sorry, Jimmy, this, that, and the third, he's going to have to spin that thing against the Dolphins. So if you want to apologize to him, I'm not going to apologize to him until I see a Lombardi. But if you want to apologize to him,
wow.
Well, I'm just saying. Well, okay,
so if he goes to back-to-back conference title games, has been to a Super Bowl,
but I never called Jimmy trash. I just think Jimmy's okay. I just think he's good. I just think he's good.
I got you.
So you get to elite. I'll apologize for elite. Now, if you call Jimmy trash, then you probably should apologize now. So you go up against the Dolphins next week. I would even say, let's say same thing. Let's say, because we know the Niners are really good at that first couple drives. They'll come out and they'll hit you in the mouth. So let's say Niners go up 10-0. You cannot, first quarter, second quarter, you cannot get conservative because the Dolphins, they can turn it on in a blink of an eye. I would say the same thing about the Bucs, right? So you're not going to be able to get conservative. So Kyle, I'm glad you enjoyed it because these next couple games, you're not going to be able to do that.
No, and I'm glad you brought up the phrase flipping the switch. That's really where this conversation lies, and I think is going to be carried throughout this week on this station. Is the Niners have been in positions before where they get a lead, get out ahead, look strong, and then the other team begins to chip away, hit a couple explosive plays, maybe a penalty hurts you, maybe it's a turnover, and then the offense can't flip the switch back on. Mm-hmm. Once it's off,
right,
it feels like Shanahan, along with everyone else, kind of shuts it down, and then it feels like it kind of did today, which was they're limping to the finish line a little bit. Injuries make it look more so like that today than against other teams. But when you look at their wins on their schedule, I think that's why people were kind of concerned after the Chargers game. That was a banged-up Los Angeles team that you limped away with a 22-16 win against. That's the reason why, I know it's the first game of the season, different quarterback, but that's why Chicago can come back from a 10-point lead, because there's less of a switch that can be flipped. Denver is a game that everyone's going to forget because it was such a gross-looking game, but one play is the difference in that game. One score is going to beat you. And in games that are 13 in the teens for the Niners, it does feel like there is one play that could beat you or flip the switch in favor of your opposition, and then you can't get it back. And that's happened to Kyle more than once, more than a few times. That's what people are most afraid of, I think, walking out of these wins.
Especially when if you want to include the past, right? Even prior to being on the Niners, this has been something that has bit Kyle before. The deeper you get into this season and the closer you get to the playoffs, and in the playoffs, you have to play to continue to extend the lead. You cannot play to try to hold on to the lead. Now, once you get to the fourth quarter and you're trying to burn clock or whatever it is, sure, but you can't start trying to do that at halftime, right? It's 10-0 at halftime. All right, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, let's just hammer you. You can't do that, because these teams, for as good as the Niners defense is, you're not going to be facing Andy Dalton in the playoffs. You're not going to be facing Colt McCoy in the playoffs. You're going to be facing guys that can do some things. So, and he understands that. It's just a matter of you still want to see it. And I think the good thing is at least the Dolphins are in the AFC, so nothing will change if they aren't able to pull it out. But I think it will be really nice to see this Niner offense against a team that is, I don't know, I would say you probably consider Dolphins top 3 in the AFC, right?
I mean, right now they are. I mean, just setting up, looking at the record. You know, if you take a look at the AFC, obviously it's the Chiefs. I'd still put the Bills as the second team, and you're looking at the Dolphins, you're looking at the Bengals, you're looking at the Ravens. The Titans are up there as well. Yeah, so they are a top 3 team, but their defense does give me pause, and that's why I think it is going to be a good test for the Niners, because this is a Dolphins team that, yes, they do score a lot. They have also allowed 256 points. That would be the in the bottom 5 in the AFC. Like, they allow points, and they typically get into shootouts. I know they didn't today because it was the Houston Texans, but they can put up points. They also give up a lot of points. So you're going to have to play their game in a sense of track meet up and down. And I think the Niners can do it, but they're going to need everyone to be healthy, and they're more importantly, I think, going to need to run the football, which they didn't really do today against the Saints team that was going to force Jimmy to beat them through the air. He did so in the first half, and the Niners, they set up the run now with the pass. I think they've done it more than ever, but when you can't run the football, it's hard then to go back to the pass. Like we saw a couple times in the second half, sort of a few runs, set up play action, Jimmy Garoppolo, finding Ayuk for a big gain. But that's not always going to be there if you're getting 3.5 yards a carry, if you're getting 3 yards a carry. And that's where I do think there will be a little more force feeding of Christian McCaffrey. Maybe you don't want to see that. But that's also where I think the impact of Mitchell comes into play, because Mitchell is allowed to be the garbage man for this offense. He's the second running back, but he takes the most physical carries. Mm-hmm. And that's where the injury hurts them the most, I think. And it's not like he is, the sacrificial lamb by any means. He's a quality running back, but you have him in there to feed him the ball in the second half so that Christian McCaffrey doesn't have to take those hits. C-Mac's the guy that is in early to help put you up. And then Elijah Mitchell, who we didn't even see in the game until the beginning of the second quarter, then comes in to supplement McCaffrey with, all right, then we're going to beat you over the head. If you can't do that, it makes all the passing and kind of creative Shanahan style points, it makes it moot.
Yeah, I'm curious if they just rock with Jordan Mason with this injury to Elijah Mitchell. Again, sprained MCL, probably going to be out a couple weeks. Curious if they try to bring anybody in, if they just rock with who they got, because we have not seen, these other running backs as much as obviously we've seen Elijah Mitchell, and then they move on from Jeff Wilson Jr., which was a reason certain people thought that trade was a little dicey. And what do you know? Just a couple weeks later, Elijah Mitchell out with the injury. 408 is chiming in. Today's second half seemed like a good opportunity to let loose and take some shots. Very conservative calls. Do you think it's possible, like we said, the Saints, yes, their defense is good, but they get left out to dry because their offense can't do anything and turn the ball over.
That's closer to top 10 than bottom 10.
Exactly. But do you think it's possible that because Kyle Shanahan realized who they were playing, he felt that they could win without putting out more film, without allowing, teams, not just the Dolphins, but the Seahawks, NFC teams that you're going to have to face in the playoffs? Okay, well, they ran this here. And as you try to get film on the Niners, it's pretty tough because you've seen the Cardinals tape. I don't even know if anybody's going to look at that because they're just thinking, the Cardinals, they just didn't even want to be there. But in terms of what you saw today, do you think Kyle is playing it a bit coy with his play calling against teams that he knows, all right, if we can hang on because they can't score, I'll open it up if I need to, but I don't need to?
Yeah, I think he also looks at a Saints team that their strength is their defense. And so you don't want to feed into that at all by making potentially a compromising play. And if Jimmy Garoppolo is getting happy feet and maybe throwing the ball over the middle a little bit more than he's supposed to, and is also maybe a bit banged up because he got hit in the knee in the second half.
Yeah.
You don't want to put your quarterback in a tough spot and have him maybe get even more injured. You already have a 13-point lead. I do think there is some of that which plays into a conservative Kyle Shanahan. I can't necessarily fault him for that, but that also opens up the door for criticism from media, from fans, from everyone, because they see what you did or attempted to do in the first half, which was get aggressive, go forward in the red zone. Although you came up short, I can't fault the aggression. Maybe can fault the play calling. But in the second half, there wasn't even the aggression. And that's where, again, it's like, I understand you got the win. I'm happy you got the win. I'm happy they're in first place. But there's a couple of things that we're just taking notes on through each of these wins to say, they might show up against Miami.
Right.
And that's hard.
Well, and I don't even know, very weird, I don't even necessarily know if I know one pass to Debo looked like one of the slants, but Jimmy actually threw it behind him, which he rarely does, but didn't even see one of the patented slant routes today from Debo. Just a very interesting game, but again, maybe Kyle felt like he didn't have to open it up as much as he typically does because the Saints just could do nothing against that defense. If you're a Niners fan and you're by a computer, you're by your phone, just go ahead and Google NFC West standings because it's a beautiful sight to see. Your 49ers are there all alone at the top. And you get to enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend knowing that you are above the Seahawks. And the Seahawks got walked off on at home on an 86-yard touchdown from Josh Jacobs to the Raiders. And now you get to sit down and maybe see what the Eagles are all about. But if you are still going to be listening here to 95.7 The Game, we got Sterling Bennett coming up along with my guy Dan Devone. Thank you for listening to Overtime with Alan Stiles and Evan Giddings. It has been fun. Enjoy this one. Niners get the W 13-0. We'll talk to you soon. 95.7 The Game.
All right, folks, this is it. The weekend many of you have been waiting for. Black Friday. The lowest prices of the year on the top-rated brands of TV. Samsung, LG, and Sony with deals up to $1,000 off. No need to buy a poor